Hey everybody, welcome to Blue Collar Real Estate. I'm Greg Mayo.
And I am Ryan Herget. Greg, I'm most excited of all the episodes we've done, 2 seasons now. This is going to be my favorite episode. You know, we're going live and we're talking about something that really brings full circle everything that brings in what we started this entire show about. And that is, how does somebody go from taking a house that's maybe not perfect, it's not brand new, it's not what I like, right?
Right.
The shiny object over there, right? But how do you take a house that's not awesome and make it awesome? So we're literally going to walk through the story of that. And even better yet, about 10 minutes from now, we're going to bring in the owners who bought this house. It was one of their very first investment properties. I am so uber excited to bring them on. They've become really, really good friends throughout the process. So it's going to be a really, really cool show today. So,
and dare I say, and I don't know how you're going to react, but dare I say we're getting ready to tell people how we actually HGTV'd a home.
We actually HGTV'd this home. I'm excited about it.
Never thought I'd turn that phrase.
And we brought all the people in. It was just like they do on the show, except we didn't have the cameras there for that, although we should have done that. But nevertheless, it worked out beautiful. So we're excited to share that story today. So Greg, we're going to get started, and we're going to tell people about doing a flip. Right? We're going to walk people through how to do a flip here in Indianapolis. So let's like circle back the clock here about, 60 days or so, maybe 90, I don't know. But we met, the people who ultimately ended up purchasing this house. They're from another state out in Boston. We'll tell their story here in a few minutes. But they came in, I had the privilege of meeting them, and then we were able to find something small. But from the time I met them to the time that we got started, this whole little thing called COVID happened. And it changed everything, right? Like, we were going to go in and do an even bigger project, and things didn't work out because of the COVID stuff. But we found the perfect house to get started with. And so for anybody that's looking to get started in real estate investing, we found the perfect house to get started with. And this thing has worked out so awesome for them. I'm super excited.
And this is really important. When you start out in investing, sure, you want to go for that giant Queen Anne Victorian, right? The 5,200 square foot, 150-year-old house, and make it so beautiful and sexy. However, that 8-month rehab and $150,000, $200,000, it's a little taxing if you've been doing it a while.
It can absolutely be taxing, especially if you've been doing it a while, let alone if you haven't been doing it a while.
Right.
If you're getting started with something like this, go ahead. I know you and I have a lot of stories to share on this episode about this, but at the end of the day, if you've never done a rehab before, which is really what this show is about, this one specifically, if you've never done this before, we want to literally pull the curtain back on what it is to do a rehab and tell you all about it, and from all the different perspectives.
And it reminds me of when I coach youth basketball. And I had a couple kids who literally did not understand the concept of a layup. Mm-hmm. These were 5th and 6th graders. One of them wanted to shoot 3-pointers during the game.
Well, Steph Curry's pretty good at that. So.
And I'm like, okay, dude, I won't say his name, but I'm like, all right, dude, look, let's learn how to shoot from 5 feet before we worry about shooting from 30 feet. It's the same kind of concept with flipping houses. Let's start off with something small, which we did with this one. Let's do the necessary work, and there's always going to be challenges and opportunities, but the smaller the property, the smaller the scope of work, the less trouble you have, if that makes any sense.
Generally speaking, I would totally agree with that. And the smaller the project, the less risk too. When you're getting started with investing in anything, it's not a bad idea to put your toe in the deep end, right? Just let's get started here before we go all in, 10 foot deep, off the big diving board, et cetera. And so that's what this property specifically was. And so let's go ahead and kind of get started with some of the specifics on this. Now, this is a specific home located on the southeast side of Indianapolis in a more urban area. This was a home built in the late 50s. But, this was a home that had been lived in for a long, long time. It needed a lot of TLC, a lot of updates.
Yep.
Basically, it was just a house that needed every single square inch of the house. It needed a little bit of love, right?
Exactly right. And there were a lot of things that made it easier. It's a slab.
Yep.
Right. So we didn't have crawl space issues like
Thankfully.
I know you've had a ton of this year.
Crawl spaces. I literally never want to go look at a house with a crawl space again right now.
You can come over and help me in my crawl space.
I'm busy that day.
I bet. But yeah, so it's what I would call a national home. Now, there were several builders that built this style of home in the late 50s into the 60s, but it's a very, very simple home, simple layout, simple floor plan, one bathroom, a kitchen, right? Yeah. It was a great project to jump in on.
So let's flip through a couple of these initial photos so we can kind of, and for those of you that are listening on podcast platform right now, iTunes, Stitcher, all of that, scroll over to the YouTube page and check this out on YouTube, because you're going to be able to see specifically what we're talking about. Pretend this is a TV show right now instead of a podcast. But, this was a house that just simply, it had this ragged chain link fence that was just, it was gaudy. It needed a lot of TLC. The outside yard, it definitely hadn't been mowed or maintained in a long, long time. As we go through it, as we kind of click through a few of the next photos here, we can see, they attempted to like paint. I think I'm not sure where they went painting at.
I think
or got
some
those
of this
lessons.
is like drywall mud. Didn't they try to up around the corners or something?
Let's go with the word nice, like really, really nice. Like this is, if you can imagine the worst painting job of all time, for those of you listening, imagine that, and that's what this looks like, along with a baseboard heater that was painted in a bright blue color.
And that's the fascinating part. So the drywall mud, the corners, it looks like they did with their bare hands, which I'll tell you a story about that some other time.
Big another story, yeah.
But they did such a nice job painting the baseboard heater, although it ostensibly ruined the baseboard heater, but they did a fine job painting it. I just wonder why the skills didn't transfer.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. The skills on the baseboard heater, it when we plugged that thing in, I'll never forget this, when we like plugged it in, it got hot and it started smelling.
Yeah.
It's like, you wouldn't think that, like, wouldn't you notice that after a day or two? It's like, maybe this wasn't
would think.
Yeah, but nevertheless, so that's what we started with. And Jason, if you don't mind talking to Jason, our producer here, let's flip like 2 or 3 photos ahead. I really want to get to the photo of the kitchen, because this is one of the areas that became such a cool point of this home. Yeah, the green baseboard heater in the kitchen as we're going through the photos here.
Sexy.
Maybe 1 or 2 more photos deep. There it is. So this is the kitchen. And so one of the things that I think so many times when you're taking on a investment, that you don't take into consideration, and that's the like, oh crap, I didn't plan on that factor. Well, we had one of those big ones with this.
Oh yeah.
With this specific home, because these cabinets, while they're, they look clean, we had a full budget in place to sand them down, clean them all up. Well, guess what? When we sanded these things down, they had been sanded down about 42 times before, I think. I mean, there was scuff marks in them. They were an absolute train wreck. So this was one of those first surprises that we really ran into on this home, that it's like, wait a second, plan A is no longer going to work, and we had to revert to a plan B on that.
And the thing is, we didn't find that out until we had gotten halfway through the $56 gallon of cabinet paint.
Right. That was one of those awesome lessons learned.
Right.
So before we dive too deep into this, I want to bring on a couple special guests. If you don't mind, Greg, let's go ahead and bring Perry and Paul into this conversation right now. We've got Perry Livingston and Paul Sellew on the line with us. Perry and Paul were the original investors on this specific home, and we really wanted to bring them on to really encourage others that, yes, you can do this. Yes, this can be scary. Yes, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and there's so many things that can happen. But anybody can truly use real estate as a vehicle to make money, to use as a long-term investment strategy, use as a short-term investment strategy, as we're using on this one right now. So there's so many awesome ways that you can use real estate to move your life forward in a very positive way. So Perry, we are so excited to have you on board. So thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we want to kind of dive into this a little bit and kind of pull some of your story out, as far as what was it, because, you're getting into the business of real estate investing, right? And, you started down this path. We had the pleasure of meeting a handful of months ago, but kind of tell everybody your story. What was it that made you decide that, real estate investing is the right thing for me, and kind of bring people up to speed, if you don't mind, in the next 2 or 3 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. So I've always loved the idea of passive income, and I never really understood the vehicle at which to do that. Like, I was always one of those people that were searching online, like, how do I make money at home? Like, how do I get this started? And real estate kind of kept popping up for me. And fortuitously, like, most of my family is in real estate, whether it be residential or commercial. And I found this website called Bigger Pockets, and I just dove deeper and deeper and deeper. And I knew this was definitely the right path for me. So I tried to figure out how to make that happen. So I ended up kind of fast forwarding, getting my first home, and was like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't need to live here anymore. Like, we're going to move to a different location. Like, let's rent this thing out. So that was kind of like my first real estate investment property. And then I met my good friend Paul, and we were thinking about how do we grow this real estate idea a little bit bigger. And honestly, now the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I absolutely love the fact that, you guys chose to just dive in on this and get started with everything. Let me ask you, Perry, because I think a lot of times a lot of people are maybe reserved at getting started with doing something like this. Tell people, if you could maybe break it down into 3 simple steps, not to put you on the spot here or anything, but if you could kind of break it down, what were maybe some of the initial fears that you had about getting started here? But then, what are maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that you would recommend that somebody that's considering doing this, what are those first couple steps for somebody?
So I think the first fear for me, which I think for a lot of people, is money. Right? Real estate is not cheap. It's not like you're buying like a candy bar at the store. Like this thing can get quite large. And I think for me at least, like when I took a look at like those HGTVs, they always, dramatize things where things hit the fan and everything goes wrong, but then it might all work out at the end. Like that type of stuff terrified me. So like for me, it was education and like truly understanding like what type of funding is actually available for me. Like whether it be the different types of mortgages, whether it be my favorite acronym of OPM or other people's money, and just really understanding like how you can truly finance a property to kind of get things done. And the second piece is not being afraid to ask questions. So like for me, like I'm a huge proponent of bigger pockets and kind of going to a community of real estate investors, especially now that we're all remote, like having an online community of like-minded folks is very important, especially those who are willing to answer your questions of, I'm sure like people have given answers to previously. So that's been immense for me. And then third, like, don't be afraid to fail. Like on this property, which I'm sure we'll go through, like we screwed up a lot, right? But every single one of those screw ups was a learning experience.
That's it.
So like, regardless of if, we make money on this or not, like the value here was everything that we've learned. And that's something that kind of no $15,000 webinar or like seminar would ever give to us.
And so, I think I'm sorry, go ahead, Greg.
Well, let me ask you a question, Perry. We acquire this property, right? And you get the offer accepted and you do the closing and now you've got this thing. What honestly were you feeling at that moment?
I was a mixture of joy and a little bit of panic.
Just a little?
Just like a little bit of panic. Well, I knew I had a great team on the ground. Like Paul and I were like, okay, this is awesome. Like we have a good people around us. But like you mentioned, we're from Boston. So we have to relinquish like a lot of control. And as Paul will tell you, I like kind of effing everything in a row and I like understanding what happens next. But for this, I didn't know that. But you guys kind of gave me the confidence to keep on trucking.
So let's kind of dive into that because you just brought up a really, really key point. We've talked about this on previous episodes, Greg, and that is, building a team.
Yep.
And you alluded this already, Perry, and one of the first things that you said here, I'm sorry, is the second thing, when it comes around finance, you have to be able to pay for this stuff. It doesn't just, happen like it does on HGTV, right? It's not one of those things where, wow, magically I just bought this house with free money and then I fixed it with free money and then all of a sudden I just sold it and made $200,000. It doesn't quite work that way. There's a few more moving parts. So, kind of walk people through, what's it look like, from your standpoint, because, you're somebody that does a lot of due diligence. I know that you and I had several hours of conversation before we ever even met, and so you're somebody that does a lot of due diligence. You came into this very, very well prepared, I feel, having done as much research as you could before you came into town and, said, yeah, Indianapolis is where we want to invest our money at. But what are those steps? Like, how do you assemble a team? Kind of walk people through that, if you don't mind.
So for us, I'm going to honestly keep going back to bigger pockets, but it's understanding like who you need. And that's honestly kind of where we came from for naming our company, kind of 4 Core Capital. So it's kind of those 4 core people that you need in like your investment business that are boots on the ground, especially when you're investing from afar. So for us, that's the real estate agent, the contractor, the lender, and then the property management company or property manager. So like at first we were kind of looking at doing what's it called, like multifamily investments and buy and holds, which we're still going to do, but first understanding A, who you need, and then B, who the rock stars are in that area. Like from a real estate agent perspective, like who has a ton of listings in the area? Who's the person that's getting mentioned the most when people are talking about Indianapolis? Who does the most volume? Who seems to have a real grasp on the market and is able to give you a true education? And that's going to be the same for every single other person that you choose to be a part of that team. It's just knowing the right questions to ask, who those individuals are, and those buckets of individuals that you need.
No, I absolutely love that answer, because it's how, business is all about aligning yourself with the right people that, in order to make things happen. No one person can move the entire earth at once. It takes an entire army of the right people doing the right things in order to make that happen. And so, tell people about that. When you guys were coming into the city and you initially started kind of looking at things, I know the way you and I met, was through a mutual friend, somebody that you work with, but, how do you go through that process of assembling that team? Because that's not something that just happens overnight, right? It's certainly a process of interviewing people, knowing, what your goals are going in. What's that process look like? Because I truly feel that that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that people don't cross, that prohibits them from moving forward. Because if you don't assemble the right team, it always seems way too difficult, and things just ultimately don't happen. People choose not to move forward, but you guys did. You took the time to do that. If you don't mind, kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so a big part of this is going to be patience. So for Paul and I, it took, I would say, 9 months before we were comfortable getting to a point of even flying to Indianapolis to then figure out what our first purchase was going to be. And even when we got there, like the team wasn't yet assembled. Like we had a lot of conversations, we did a lot of research, we had kind of Google Doc after Google Doc of what are the questions that we need to ask each of these 4 people that need to be on our team. Literally probably about 2 pages each. Like, Ryan, we asked you all of those questions, and lo and behold, you passed with flying colors. But just, I really can just boil it down to perseverance and time.
Yeah.
You need to be willing to do the work. Like you see the people on TV who kind of made the dream work, right? And a lot of that was blood, sweat, and tears on the back end, and being able to deal with that things aren't going to go smooth. Like you need to be okay with kind of bumps in the road. And a big part of that, right, is making sure you're talking to the appropriate people and figuring out who the appropriate people are. And especially in today's day and age, it's not as difficult to find those people if you're willing to do the work.
Well, and just to piggyback on what you're saying, Ryan, you know as well as I do, you get calls all the time from people that say, hey, I'm an investor. My first question is, have you done properties before? 99% of the time, the answer is no. And probably 70% of the time they say, but I went to this seminar, which Perry, you talked about a few minutes ago, that whole concept. They've never done the due diligence. They've never done all the background work that Perry and Paul did. And so a big part of the reason, and I just want to stress this or reemphasize it, a big part of the reason that we're talking to Perry and we're talking about a house that is flipped, that's done, is because of the 9 months of background work that they did in the beginning.
That's so huge, because it's not something that just happens. Yes, did we learn some lessons? And we're going to dive into that next. That's the next thing we're going to talk about, are some of those lessons learned here. But ultimately, it's doing that research. We still got this thing done in a month, which isn't terrible by any stretch of the imagination. But ultimately, it's doing the research. It's putting the right team of people together. Otherwise, man, that goal is going to get further and further and further away every single day of the week. And, I think Perry really hit the nail on the head. I really appreciated when I remember sitting down with him at Bakersfield, on Mass Ave, and we sat down and we talked through what are we going to do here. And it was very apparent that this was not the normal, I'm thinking about investing in real estate, woo-woo conversation. It was, no, these people had done their homework. They were ready to go. They had intelligent questions. They wanted to know specifics about specific areas. And I love that stuff because it puts me on my toes and it makes me go to work.
And I got to share this quick. So what we're talking about, I had an investor call me, this is like 3 years ago. They wanted to buy their first flip. Told me where they wanted to be, what they want to spend, bloody blue, bloody blue, bloody blue. Found them a house. We bought it. I drew up the plans for what to do to it, yada, yada, yada. They wanted to do the demo themselves. I'm like, sweet, right on. you understand demo work sucks, right? When you pop that ceiling,
Man,
then you're going to wear all that insulation and vermiculin and all the other stuff.
They truly just always cut the like scene on HGTV the second that hammer hits,
Right.
and everything blows up. Man, all the aftermath of the like debris and mess and all the stuff you have to deal with, they just edit that out. It looks beautiful on TV.
So they call me. We closed on a Friday. They were heading over there to demo. I went over with them. We walked around, talked a little bit. I talked about opportunities to look at when you're demoing a 100-year-old home. They called me Sunday afternoon. Can you come down to the house? I said, sure. So I drove down, get out. I walk inside. They're both in there, and they're both covered in soot and nasty and whatever. I said, what's up, guys? And I kid you not, he looked at me, pulled his mask down, and said, I don't want to flip houses. And so 3 days later, we listed the house. That is what happens when you don't do your background, your due diligence.
Exactly it. So Perry, with any new endeavor, everybody loves the HGTV story when you buy the house for, using other people's money and don't use any of your own to fix it. And then all of a sudden you make 150 grand. So let's tell people though about the story of unexpected surprises. So we definitely had a couple of them on this one. And these are the stories that make, like 5 years from now when we're sitting around a campfire telling stories, that these are the funny stories. But let's kind of dive into those, right now a little bit. We didn't have anything too terrible happen with this. It wasn't terrible. I was talking to another investor, Perry, you actually know him, Steven, yesterday, where they've had $40,000 of stuff stolen over the last month. So thankfully, knock on wood here, we've not had anything like that. But Perry, let's kind of talk about some of those roadblocks. As you get started, Greg asked you the question about, okay, you just bought this thing, now you own a home that's 1,000 miles away from you. What are some of those roadblocks that maybe we encountered, and some of the challenges that we had to navigate through? If you don't mind, just brutally sharing some of those.
Yeah. So in terms of the challenges, like, we obviously had a timeline. We didn't want this thing to stay kind of under construction for too long, so we didn't have cost overrun, right? We talked about that a lot. But kind of a few things that happened. So one you mentioned before were those cabinets, right? So we had initially budgeted for just painting them, making them look pretty, but we sanded them down. And Ryan, you gave me a call and you're like, these things look terrible. Like, if we put this thing on the market with these cabinets, like, this thing will not sell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, luckily that was only maybe a few hundred, maybe a few more dollars to replace, but definitely something that increased our timeline, something for paid labor that we couldn't recoup, and something we honestly just kind of had to swallow and move on. And then the next piece is, I think you said they were a previous tenant or someone else who had lived there.
Oh my gosh. This was fun.
I'm
Greg
sorry.
and I are laughing. Sorry to interrupt, Perry, but we're laughing because this was a moving adventure.
So the one of the guys we had working on the house calls me one morning, and he says, "Hey, somebody's stealing the pavers out of the front yard."
This was fucking. Excuse
Hey,
my language.
live.
That was live. Sorry. This was insane. This blew me away. He texts me this picture, and he's like, "Yo, dude," and I'm like, "What in the heck is going on here right now?"
And it's broad daylight.
Broad daylight. Sorry,
And-
Perry. Didn't mean to interrupt you there.
And he said, do you want me to stop him? I'm like, good God, no. I'll go get some more pavers and take care of it. And then that night, or the next morning, I come in, I'm standing in the front room looking outside. The same former tenant had come back and tried to pull out all three of the English boxwoods in the front yard, and I guess couldn't figure out how to.
This was so comical. So imagine trying to pull a new shrub out of the grass or like the ground, and then just kind of giving up and leaving it there. That's what we came to the next day. It was super fun.
Hilarious.
It was a lot of fun. Sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt you, Perry, but we had some stories to, to tell there.
Yeah, you guys definitely needed a break after all of that, because I think that was the biggest roadblock that we hit. It was just theft after theft after theft after vandalism. Because we had like the AC units stolen, we had the pavers stolen, we had the shrubs vandalized, and then the piece de la resistance was the stove. Like, Paul and I were talking to her, like, who steals a stove? And also, how do you steal a stove so efficiently with someone who's clearly not all there mentally?
Man. It was Oh, you're so right, though. But those are the questions that again, 3 years from now, like these are the funny stories. But oh my gosh, like as you're experiencing this, it's like you just stole a used stove, really. Like that's where we're at. But then secondly, it's like, holy crap, now we have to we literally spent one day, 2 weeks ago fixing everything that we had already done. And those are things that, as an investor, you have to prepare yourself for, because these aren't an anomaly to this home. This happens all of the time. I was just talking to my buddy Steven, and, he's had a rough month dealing with some of this stuff going on in, some areas of Indianapolis. And, it's just part of it. But, ultimately, Perry, we're going to, kind of wrap this up and let you, move on with your pre-4th of July weekend. But, what would you leave anybody listening to the show with? What would you want them to know about, getting started with real estate investment, or maybe some lessons learned, or about assembling the team? What would be, maybe a couple lessons that you would want to leave with people, as far as lessons learned?
So first and foremost, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's so many different nuances to real estate. Even though I've done so much due diligence, I'm still going to be learning 10 years from now. Second, assume the worst case scenario. Don't assume you're going to end up with the best piece of property in the best area with the best team and just everything being all peachy keen and ready for TV. My rule of thumb is just always have a 20% buffer, both on the purchase and especially on the rehab. Because like you were mentioning, Greg, once you open up those walls, you're going to find a whole mess of stuff in there. And things are going to need to be fixed. Things are going to need to be changed. We had some electrical issues with the hood over the stove, and that wasn't accounted for, and we needed to pay for it. Mm-hmm. But just go in with an open mind and get a true understanding of the full situation. And also, I'd say my last piece of advice is don't go in it thinking you know it all, right? Because there's always going to be someone who has more experience than you, who has seen different things than you. And it's especially in a community like this, you're going to be able to get such great advice from others. And if you close yourself off and think you're kind of hot stuff, then you're not going to learn anything. And you're going to end up like the people who pull down that mask saying, I don't want to do real estate anymore.
Right.
Right on.
No, I think that's super, super good advice. And, one of the other things that I wanted to share with people is that, if you're considering doing this, if you want to take this on yourself versus maybe, hiring a contractor to help you do it, et cetera, there is one thing that nobody ever takes into consideration when they're redoing a house.
I know what you're going to say.
And that is one thing. Greg, you know where I'm going with this. So I personally counted on this particular job, and this doesn't account for Greg or the rest of our crew, but Greg and I did most of the heavy lifting as far as, gathering materials, trying to control costs, et cetera on this. But in my hand, I hold an envelope right here. And in this envelope, in this envelope, for me, I can't speak for Greg, but here is 29 trips to Lowe's / Home Depot / man, you better have some hours in your day when you need to get stuff, because things are not going to go according to your initial budget. So how, again, important is hiring a team, Greg?
It's the most important thing. And
because, by the way, I'm just going to interrupt you one more time. I just want to reiterate, if you're not on YouTube, get on YouTube, because these are all individual trips to Lowe's, not one trip, not a second trip. I'm throwing these around like dollars, making it rain.
You totally should have. Well, and the thing is, the thing about the team concept, right? Most of the challenges we ran into, and I'll say it with Perry here live with us right now, we didn't share with Perry and Paul, not because we were hiding anything, but because our job is to deal with the day-to-day stressors.
Right. That's
not their job.
That's it. And that's why you hire a team of real estate professionals, of the right contracting professionals, to make sure that, all of these trips to Lowe's, guess what? Perry and Paul do not need to know about these trips to Lowe's, because it's part of what we do. It's a service we provide to make sure that, if they're going to invest $1, that we're going to help them get more and more dollars out of that investment. And they're investing it to make sure that, they're hiring us to do the job, simply put. So, but that's what it is. So if you want to take these projects on yourself, which I strongly endorse, I encourage people, go do this stuff. Go do it once yourself, so you experience what it is, so you know if it's for you or not. Because you never know until you try. And as an entrepreneur, man, I want to encourage you to go try, because you'll never get ahead if you don't try something new.
Right.
So go do it. Go learn. Go fall on your face. And at a minimum, if you don't lose money, but if like you said earlier, Perry, you learn on your first one, man, that's worth its weight in gold, because not only that, you've not lost money, but you also gained this invaluable experience. Because Greg, you just did another flip right now where this one took us 1 month to do. You just did another one using a lot of the lessons that we learned from this one, and you did it in 2 weeks.
13 days.
13 days.
Yep.
So that's what I'm talking about is how do you leverage the lessons that you learned to do it better the next time? Maybe you don't make that huge, massive pile of money the very first investment, but guess what? Maybe the second one, that's your payday, or the third one, that's your payday. So that's what we want to encourage people to really, really consider is, get started. Start with doing something, because sitting on the sidelines not doing anything is not going to get you the result.
And the first one is class.
You're right.
Not with us, because I have no class, but the first one is a class. So my final question, guys, before we let y'all go, we're through this one. We're done. Are you ready to do the next one?
We're already looking. Let's go.
Yes, we are.
How are you looking? So we've got Paul on the line. Paul, Paul was able to join us. We had some technical difficulties a few moments ago. Paul, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join us here. Perry was carrying all the way to this show, so we're thankful for her joining us on this one. But thank you for taking a few minutes to join us on this. So let's gather in 2 minutes. What's your rundown from start to finish? You've been a real estate investor now. You've started it. You've bought one. You've sold one. Bring us up to speed. What's the story?
Yeah, so sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm up here in upstate Vermont, so I was a little nervous about the wire service, but I came back to my hotel room to make sure that the wire was good. Look, for talking to the audiences that haven't necessarily done the 9 months of pre-work that Perry did, that's me, right? That's me. I didn't really know the first thing about real estate before Perry approached me. And I didn't know what to expect when I came in here. And so the biggest thing I've learned throughout this process, it goes exactly back to what you folks were saying, which is it's all about the team. And I said it to you, Greg, the other day that, sure, we're hiring you, but we look at you guys as partners way more so than people that are just doing a job for us. And I think that mindset is what hopefully will make us successful moving forward. And to your point, Ryan, about where do we go from here? Well, we have big plans. We have really big plans, and I think as long as we can secure the financing that we need, which is a huge challenge, which was a huge challenge on this one, particularly with COVID, and will continue to be a huge challenge, just given the stability of the markets and whatnot. We're open for big things, but we want to go at this and scale at this in a sustainable manner and not take on too much at once. So sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. And Greg, I like the fact that you like basketball. I didn't know that. So I'll pass it over to you guys.
Well, you're a lot taller than me, so we're not doing one-on-one, and a lot younger. But hell yeah, we'll toss the hoop around a little bit next time you're in town.
All right, everybody. Well, we are going to wrap up the latest edition of Blue Collar Real Estate. This has been by far one of my favorite episodes we've ever done, Greg. So
are we wrapping up?
Are we going to wrap up this episode, or are we going to keep talking about
I think we got to show the after pictures.
We do need to show the after pictures. Holy crap, we forgot the after pictures. I'm so thankful you're here because, well, there's a lot of things I'm not good at in this world. So
thanks for inviting me.
All right, so so Jason, for everybody on YouTube, we want to show you these after pictures. I'm super, super thankful for these pictures. They turned out really, really good. The house turned out really, really well. And thankfully, we were able to get it sold opening weekend, and it was a really, really good experience all in all. So if we don't mind, Jason, if you've got a quick second, I'm going to stall and talk about some stuff while we're getting that pulled up right now. But
let me tell this story.
Oh, please.
So we're talking about challenges and opportunities with this house. And I love this. So I show up at the house, and I back up into the driveway in my truck, and I'm starting to unload stuff. Here comes a guy walking down the street. He's wearing jean shorts, no shirt. He's got a rat tail. Yes, I said a rat tail.
That's a good look, though.
I'm not
I hear
judging.
That's coming back.
If my wife would let me, I'd have a mullet and my Magnum PI stash right now. But she said hard no. Yeah. Anyway,
I'll talk to her. I'll talk to her for you.
Get her to join that. All right. Anyway, dude's got a rat tail, no shirt on. He's missing several teeth, and I'm not saying that to judge him. I'm just painting the picture. He's pushing this ratty-looking mower down the street, and he says, "Hey, your yard needs cut." I said, "Hell yeah, it does, dude. You want me to cut it?" I said, yeah, would you please? How much do you charge? He looked around for a minute as if he was studying the square footage and said, $20. I said, sold. And I kept carrying whatever was in my hands into the house. Well, then he yells behind me, hey, can I get that $20? I said, sure. As soon as you're done mowing, I'm going to be here for a couple hours. I turn around and start walking again. And he goes, hey, I got to go take care of something. I'll be back in a minute. And he kept pushing that mower down the street. Never saw him again. Never saw him again.
Oh, I love it.
I'm like, hey, stranger, here's $20. I know you'll do it.
Oh, the things you learn doing life. So we wanted to take a few minutes and show everybody we showed you a few before pictures, but the after pictures. So, this bathroom is super, super small. It's not a large bathroom, but, one of the things that we found to do here to really just brighten this room up a lot was use another mirror. Right. So we used a larger mirror to help, expand and make the room seem a little bit larger. So mirrors are good for that. We added a lot of oil rub bronze finishes to it as well. So just a couple simple things that we could do to really help clean it up on top of that. So
yeah, and that was a great call on your part with the bigger mirror because it really does liven up the space. Behind that curtain is a shower. We do have a window in there, so we have natural light. But that mirror just amplifies it. That was a great call.
Yeah, so perfect. So as we move on through the next photos here, one of the biggest things that we showed here, and if you saw the before photos on this, unfortunately, we don't have the side-by-sides here, but, we put the vinyl plank flooring down.
Yep.
And this flooring looks so good. It goes on so well. It's such a good product. I would highly encourage anybody that if you're looking for wood floors, this is a very economical way to do it, but also it's just a good product. I mean, it weathers well. It works well with pets, with anything like that. I love this product. And, our subs that put this down, they did a great job with it.
Oh, they did. And it looks amazing. And then we have the new baseboard heaters, of course. Because the other ones were all painted, like we talked about in the beginning.
They were painted.
And then a big thing that I don't think, I think is often overlooked, and my stepdad would, if he was here, would tell you that it shouldn't be. The windows got cleaned.
Oh, it makes such a gigantic difference.
You take off the dirty window coverings, you clean the windows. I mean, look at them.
It brings in so much more light. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. So, so we did a ton of work on this house. We did a bunch of stuff to the kitchen. The kitchen's one of the coolest rooms that I want to show people. There's the AC that we had stolen. But so with this kitchen, so we ended up replacing the cabinets in the kitchen. I thought it turned out extremely cool. We put the subway tile in the background behind it, which really blended it in well.
Oh yeah.
And then of course the stainless appliances. You can't go wrong with stainless appliances. So
and that other shot of the kitchen, I think it's the next one, Jason. Nope. I mean, that's a great close up.
Oh, that was one of my favorite things that we did at this house. This was kind of a afterthought. We didn't plan on doing this originally, but then we found an opportunity to do a
Butcher block
countertop.
Yep.
And this turned out so cool, I thought. Just the butcher block countertop. We found this countertop. We had to, customize it quite a bit in order to make it work with the kitchen layout. But this wasn't a very expensive option to do, and I thought it turned out so cool.
Yeah, it just really, with the white cabinets and the white backsplash, it really gives a nice earthy element to it. And then I think the next shot's, one more. We had a shot of the full wall of kitchen cabinets. Where the hell did that go?
Well, it's coming, but it may not be on there because I may have not done it the right way.
That's kind of good. But yeah, the point, and one thing I really want to stress to people watching that are looking at these pictures, these were off the shelf cabinets.
Yeah.
Now we took our time and did the layout and made sure we got them right, and that's off the shelf countertop. In fact, everything you see on that wall, it looks so bloody custom. It's beautiful to me. Mm-hmm. But it's all off the shelf stuff. Yeah. So we are still able to maintain some semblance of a budget, right?
Well, and that was what was important because when we ran into these challenges that Perry talked about a little bit ago, we had to find some solutions because the solution is not just go spend more money, right? The solution is, okay, how do we engineer a better option in order to make this work? And that's what we were able to do. We were able to find the right cabinets. We had to alter the configuration a little bit in order to make it all work, but we were able to find the right products. And believe it or not, on this project, we had a specific budget of, I think it was $12,860, right?
Something like that, yeah.
And we came in like $96 under budget.
Yep.
even with a lot of the changes that we had to make, because we were smart about what we were doing. We interviewed a bunch of contractors. We put the right team of people in place. And yes, we certainly learned some lessons as we were going through this. You always do.
Yes, we did.
But ultimately, right, as Greg grabs the other Lowe's receipts that we had, maybe that was Menard's one, I'm sorry. But ultimately, we learned some lessons, but everybody won on this adventure, right?
And that's the key. What we look for, people always talk about win-win. We look for win cubed.
Yeah,
I want win-win-win.
Because, and what Greg means by that is we want the buyer to feel good about this house. We want the buyer to walk into this house, feel extremely excited that they've got an awesome house that they're going to be comfortable with. This wasn't like let's put some lipstick on a pig. This was like, let's do it the right way. We had a bunch of electrical stuff, as you always call the ugly money on this house. Yep. That was a huge part of our budget on this house because we had to get it right. We had to make sure that somebody wasn't going to have a problem with things later on. So that was a big part of what we had to take into consideration. But, I'm so thankful. I'm excited that, with this home, we're driving towards the closing finish line right now with it, and it just turned out well. Perry and Paul are going to win on this house. The buyer's going to win on this house. Everybody's going to win on this, and that's what we're all about.
Yep, and I think that's a good note to end on.
Done and done. So for everybody, this is the latest edition of Blue Collar Real Estate. I am Ryan Herget, sitting here with Greg Mayo. Thank you all so much. If you took anything out of this episode, which we certainly hope you did, please be sure to reach out, like, comment, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. Love any other feedback. So anything you need, reach out to us. We're here for you. Hope you all have a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody, and happy 4th.